I've been a night shift nurse for, is it 9 years now? And so up until this last year, I was full-time night shift nurse, and that definitely was hard, especially being a mom with young kids. So I started to notice it was affecting like my mental health and my ability to be a good mom. Especially a few years ago, my younger brother passed away, and so I was really struggling. So I had to make some adjustments, and this last June I went to part-time, and it was a smart choice because I'm able to balance being a mom to young adults, still kind of grieving and processing a big loss, and then also keeping up my skills and my license and being able to work just not as many nights a week. I was working the night of the fire, and then Olivia was 10 months old. So once I got home to her, I didn't really leave her. But I was working that night. It was my very first night shift coming off orientation, and it was pretty like hectic and crazy in the hospital that night. It took me a minute to catch on how serious it was. But once I did, it was pretty scary. I called my mom and my husband and was like, there's a fire, that we have to evacuate with the patients. And my mom's response, because it was my very first night leaving my 10-month-old, was like, you're not gonna call us every single night, are you, with something? And I'm like, no, there's really something happening. One of my coworkers called her mom, and her mom also got mad at her for waking her up. But then it got really real when we started having day shift nurses call in and say like they barely made it out of their house and their house burned down. We had to move all the NICU babies out of the NICU because there was a lot of smoke in there, and so I was watching them in one of the L&D room, labor and delivery rooms, and they were transferring the L&D patients out. And I was running to the ER to get supplies. They had people all over the ER with like smoke inhalation and burn injuries. So it was almost like apocalyptic. It was pretty scary, and people were crying, like falling to their knees crying. Nurses, we had management come in, and they're like, no one can leave, we have to get our patients out. So I transferred my patient in ambulance to Memorial, and then I wasn't able to get back to my car, and all the roads were closed, and this was like 8 a.m. and I had my baby at home. I was freaking out. So I finally got a ride on back roads from one of the resident doctors that I worked with, and got home by like 1, and then I just didn't leave her. I went up to the emergency command center at Memorial and asked if they needed help, and they were fully staffed at the time. And then when they told me no, I slowly found a way home. We kept looking out the window, and you could see the fire in the parking lot, and you could hear like the gas station across the street was like having little explosions, and like one of the doctors was having a panic attack, and she's like, close the windows, we gotta stop looking. We found out after the fact that it was like 20 feet from our main gas line, but they weren't telling us that in the moment for good reason. Yeah, we had firefighters up on the roof. One of my friends who lives out of town said her husband, who's a firefighter, traveled like 5 hours to come help, and he was in the Sutter parking lot. And I'm like, thank you, because we're in here. So it was pretty intense. Yes, like I've had, definitely. I feel like I'm less scared of the topic of death and dying. Like when I used to work in oncology and I'd have patients pass and like family members collapse, I didn't really know what to do with it. I would try to be there for them, and then I'd go lock myself in the bathroom and cry myself. But after going through that and experiencing like that hit of grief where you collapse and you're screaming and there's no control, I am able to be there for other people going through that. I had like a mom who was crying to me about scared to have a baby because her mom died when she was young and she doesn't know how to be a mom, and I was able to kind of bond with her in that and encourage her and uplift her in that. And of course, her birth was really traumatic, and the baby, we like rarely have to call code blues, and we had to call code blue. And so I was able to kind of be there at the bedside. My charge nurse was like, do not leave the mom. Like, you've made a bond with her, support her, we'll take care of the baby. And the baby was fine. But it was really scary in the moment, and I don't think I could have been as good of a support for her if I hadn't gone through what I had gone through. Yeah, I actually think my brother passing kind of rocked what I thought I'd believed for such a long time, because my brother was not like your typical go to church every Sunday Christian. He was kind of a rebellious soul and spirit, and he and I agreed on a lot of the things I believe, but he's like, no one's gonna tell me how to live my life. And so I kind of struggled with that for a while. Like, there's this like all-loving God that I know who loves everyone how they are, but like I just struggled with the idea of eternity and salvation and how you get there. And that's why I read a lot of books on like near-death experiences in heaven. And I just feel like my understanding of God's love and my understanding of God's grace is so much bigger than what I thought it was growing up going to church every Sunday. Now that I've seen someone who I love so much, who I believe God loves even more, like, we're out of time. But
Okay, yeah.
okay. No, I think my understanding of God and his love and his sacrifice, like, it's so much richer and it's so much deeper. It's not as superficial as it was when I see it like personally living out. And that I could talk probably for 5 hours about how my understanding of God has changed after my brother's passing. So yeah.
I'm Savannah Lance.
I'm Tylee Hatcher.
I'm Aaliyah Calderon.
I'm Grace Calder.
I'm Elias Churchman.